Convene this regular meeting of the Board of Lane County Commissioners, 2 minutes at 9:02. Thank you for your indulgence in helping me delay the start of the meeting, or allowing me to delay the start of the meeting. Today is Tuesday, August 22nd. Mr. Mokrzycki, any adjustments to the agenda?
No.
The board, any adjustments to the agenda? I see none. Then we'll move forward with the public comments. Today we have 9 people signed up for public comments. You'll be allowed 3 minutes of the microphone. Please step forward once your name is called. Identify yourself and your address for the record. At the end of 3 minutes, you'll hear a signal, a beeping signal, which will give you, that's an indication to finish what it is that you're saying. I won't shut you off right away, but bear in mind that we do have other people speaking after you. And I understand there are some people talking regarding an issue, 10 o'clock time certain item on the agenda today. Please feel free to submit your testimony at 9 o'clock during the regular public comment session. The first person we have on the list is Joel Narva, followed by Deb McGee.
Thank you, Commissioners. My name is Joel Narva. I live at 2830 Echo Lane, technically Lane County, not in the city of Eugene, also called the Free State of Santa Clara. I'm here to speak today about a big issue that you're going to spend a lot of the meeting today, a presentation on the Beaver-Hunsaker plan, the transportation plan. And I'd like to first state that I'm very happy that something is being done about this and attention is being paid. My wife and I have lived in this neighborhood for over 29 years. I drive a small truck. I bicycle 5 or 6 times a week. I walk. And when I walk and bicycle, it is extremely dangerous. And I'm glad people are at least taking a chance to make that better. Thank you to the county for that. The biggest problem there is Hunsaker Lane, or Beaver and Hunsaker Lane, has become a one-way collector that it was never designed for. If all of you have driven down there before, it's because of the Division Avenue exit off the highway that hundreds, possibly many hundreds of people get off Division and use Hunsaker as a perceived shortcut to get to their homes north on the River Road area and Santa Clara. And so Hunsaker Lane has become a Hunsaker Lane has become a collector. It was never designed for that. It was a lane, a country lane. And I feel bad that you're now dealing with a problem that started in 1963 when the Beltline Highway was built. That's why the traffic is so bad. In fact, one of my neighbors testified last month. He sat in front of his house, counted cars for 1 hour, and there were 50 cars going towards the Beltline and 950 cars going from Beltline through our neighborhood. Close, 18 times, 20 times as many cars. And I think that issue is so big, and it's not stated as boldly as it should be in the report by your Transportation Advisory Committee. If you could, instead of changing the neighborhood with more concrete and widening and taking away people's lawns as much as they suggest, I suggest you deal with the traffic and make it more the way it's designed to be. There's a fantastic exit off Beltline onto River Road, which is underused because so many people use my neighborhood as a shortcut. It's 35 and 25, people drive 35 and 45 and 50 and more on it. And it would be really easy. It would save the county a lot of money. It'd save the taxpayers a lot of money. It would do a better job if you could close the Division Avenue exit. It doesn't belong there. If you were going to build the Beltline today, you would not, my microphone, they never, if you were building the Beltline today, you would not put that exit there. It's ridiculous. 50 years ago, it was put there probably for the gravel companies for easy access and in and out. And now it's causing a huge problem. As an additional bonus, if that highway exit is taken away, you would probably improve the Delta Beltline interchange, which is the most dangerous place to drive in the Eugene area.
Thank you, Mr. Narva.
Thank you for your listening.
Deb McGee, followed by Linda Heil.
Good morning. My name is Deborah McGee. I've lived the last 30 years at 29755 Lusk Road. I'm speaking today because I am extremely concerned about the death of the ecosystem that supports our survival. 97% of the world's scientists tell us that 350 parts per million of carbon is the safe upper limit for the planet humans evolved on. Yet continuing to burn fossil fuels has caused us to be at 408 parts per million, and that is currently fueling climate change. 14 of the last 15 years have been the hottest on record in the 21st century. We are experiencing increased melting of glaciers, sea ice at record lows, monster storms, vast hurricanes, crop failures, droughts, floods, fires we cannot put out. We are experiencing the extinction at levels not seen since 55 million years ago. 200 species go extinct a day, every day. Giraffes and cheetahs are going extinct. The ocean cannot absorb any more of the carbon we burn, and ocean acidification has caused collapse of 50% of the coral reefs. 90% of the large ocean fish are gone. Scientists say the changes in the seas are unprecedented. 18 million acres of trees are destroyed every year. For 25 years, I watched the Douglas firs on our land grow. Now they are dying. They look like skeletals, ghosts. Computer models predict that the rainforest will be gone in this century. We humans have created environmental laws that legalize and permit the destruction of our planet. Such a tremendous problem, what can we do? Little Lane County has no power to affect climate change. Oh, but yes, we can make a difference. In Southern Oregon, a Canadian corporation plans to build what would become the largest polluter in all of Oregon. They want to export 1.2 billion cubic feet per day of fracked gas coming from Colorado, Wyoming, and perhaps Canada to Asia. 12% of methane leaks, add that to the burning of the parts per million in Asia, and our carbon footprint goes up and up. This project touts jobs, 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 but they never talk about the jobs lost or the habitat lost. For the sake of humanity, and especially the horrible mess of a planet that we are leaving our children and our grandchildren, it is my hope that Lane County will take a stand against this violent and destructive project for Oregon, for people, and for the planet. It's my current experience that many people are waking up to a new understanding of all that is required of us at this time in history. Let Lane County stand on the moral and right side of helping to stop climate destruction. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. McGee. And if you would like to submit that written testimony, you can certainly do so.
Good morning.
Next is Linda Heil, followed by Jerry Finnegan.
Good morning. My name is Linda Heil, and I live at 215 Foxtail Drive in Eugene, Oregon. So Bill Hall, the president of the AOC, has submitted a letter to the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission in support of the Jordan Cove Energy Project that Deb McGee just spoke about. Does Mr. Hall indeed speak for our county commission? A Canadian company plans to pipe fracked gas through Oregon to Coos Bay, where a newly constructed terminal would produce liquefied gas solely for export to customers overseas. The plant would be a huge emitter of greenhouse gases. Jordan Cove has submitted a revised project proposal after being tied up in permitting processes for over 10 years and denied by FERC in 2016 because the company showed, quote, little or no evidence of market need. Mr. Hall's letter cites figures about jobs that are misleading and inaccurate. His letter states that, quote, this project is expected to bring 3,500 construction jobs at peak, with an average construction workforce of 1,800 jobs over a 4.5-year period. But the company's own website says that during construction, Jordan Cove would employ an average of 930 people over a 4-year period. Again, Mr. Hall's letter, which speaks for you at this point, states, quote, when completed, the project would employ 250 permanent workers, whereas the website states that only 175 workers would be permanently employed. Those are inaccuracies. And most of these jobs would not be filled by local workers. This letter addresses none of the serious negative impacts, including the likelihood of an earthquake in the Cascadia subduction zone and the tsunami that would demolish the plant. dredging, construction, and the passage of huge tankers that would damage the local ecosystems, gas leaks, fires, and explosions. The use of eminent domain to take land from private landowners, harm to local businesses, such as oyster farms, fishing, and tourism. And of particular interest to Lane County, as the home of the University of Oregon, the Oregon Institute of Marine Biology is located in Charleston, Oregon, near the mouth of Coos Bay. Professors, visiting researchers, and students, including my son, would be in danger because of this plant, and the work of the Marine Biology Institute would be threatened by alterations in the ecology of the bay. The members of 350 Eugene and many other concerned citizens of Lane County are firmly opposed to this project, and we urge the Commission to write to FERC and to Mr. Hall to counter his endorsement. Thank you very much.
Well timed, Mr. Heil. Next is Jerry Finnegan, followed by Jim New. Ms. Finnegan, before you take the mic and before your time starts, thank you for your service through the years to Santa Clara and to all of Lane County.
Thank you, Commissioner Farr. I am Jerry Finnegan. Live at 1250 Irvington Drive in the place that Mr. Narva calls the Free State of Santa Clara. And I am one of the 52% of Santa Clarans that are in the county. I represent the Santa Clara Community Organization. I'm here today to speak on behalf of the Beaver-Hunsaker proposal. I think Mr. Narva did a really great job of explaining why it's needed, and so I won't go into that part of it. I am aware of it because I lived there for about 3 years, lost a small poodle on it, and that was clear back in 1968, and is already a problem then. Of course, has become 10 times more so now. It is just a 2-lane country road that is now pretty much like he calls a collector. It's more of a freeway. There are some problems with swales in that area and stuff, and that needs to be addressed. But the Santa Clara Community Organization really encourages you to support the outline of the proposal that your transportation people have come up with, because it is context sensitive. It any kind of major road improvement has a terrific impact on people along that road, but this really tries to address as much as possible those impacts, and also provides for all the amenities that road needs. And so there's that, and there's also the proposal of extending. That's included in that, of extending the bike and walking path north through East Santa Clara, which is really neat. We've worked with Delta Sand and Gravel and have made that possible, and so we hope that part of it also comes to fruition. So I guess in conclusion, I just hope that you support this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Finnegan. Jim New, followed by Betty Grant.
Commissioners, my name is Jim New. I live at 3072 Webster Street in Santa Clara, District 7. I am a member of Greater Eugene Area Riders Bike Club, GEARS, and use the Beaver-Hunsaker corridor at least once a week to attend area rides. GEARS riders frequently use the West Bank Bike Path and Beaver Street to access Northwest Eugene, Elvador, and Fern Ridge. We hope the Lane County Board of Commissioners adopts this plan to ensure safety for all the riders and pedestrians that use this area of River Road in Santa Clara. This project is a perfect example of multimodal transportation that is recommended to the recently adopted Transportation System Plan and aligns with the Climate Recovery Ordinance to reduce community-wide carbon dioxide emissions 50% by 2030 and reduce greenhouse gas emissions 7.6% per year. Also, as a bike rider, you get a close-up sense of vehicle emissions while pedaling in traffic. Rolling coal is the practice of modifying a diesel engine to increase the amount of fuel entering the engine in order to emit an under-aspirated sooty exhaust that visibly pollutes the air. Maybe you have seen this belch of dark gray diesel from modified pickup trucks emitting conspicuous air pollution for entertainment or protest. It happens frequently to Prius, electric car drivers, and cyclists. It's happened to me numerous times. And this modification of emissions violates the Clean Air Act, according to the EPA. I request you prohibit this type of vehicle modification and to also authorize mandatory vehicle smog checks at registration in Lane County to reduce transportation carbon emissions to reach the goals of the Climate Recovery Ordinance. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. New. Betty Grant, followed by Ann Milholland. Good morning.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Betty Grant. I live at 840 Jackson Street in Eugene. I'm here today to address the discussion points around that were presented for the consideration of the pilot program to allow expand car camping on county land within the urban growth boundary of Eugene. One point is that it seems that the discussion of enforcement needs muddies the issue a bit. So perhaps I don't understand it completely, but it is stated that the City of Eugene challenge, that a current City of Eugene challenge around illegal camping is not being able to make contact with the owner of a vehicle. I can understand this for illegal car camping that occurs on streets in unauthorized situations, but in an organized car camping program, vehicles or Conestoga huts are given permission to camp at a particular site. It seems that locating a resident in such a case is unlikely to be an issue. Pete Kearns has previously stated that permitted camping, such as rest stops, does not result in an increase in crime. What is more likely to happen, and what seems to be happening in organized car camping situations, is that there is a decreased need of policing. The people in the organized camping programs and de facto become kind of a security guard kind of situation often and monitor other illegal camping that's going on. So I think the suggestion that it will cost the Lane County money to do this enforcement, I think the opposite is actually true. It should save money, and maybe there initially needs to be a pot of money for enforcement, but it actually should reduce policing needs, whether it's through Lane County Sheriff or through the City of Eugene, depending on how that's set up. One other issue there was, and obviously if it saves money for the county or the city, it saves all of us citizens money ultimately in tax costs. Okay. The other issue is it's stated in the discussion points that sanitation, this is a quote, sanitation and general health conditions of homeless campers are improved with the availability of portable toilets and water provided by the program. Certainly can't disagree with that. But the fact is that sanitation and general health of our parks and the river, and therefore all of us, housed and unhoused citizens, are improved with the availability of toilet facilities and trash confinement. It has often kind of amazed me that the public health departments of our area are not more concerned about illegal camping along the river. So with organized, permitted car camping, we hope that that kind of camping will decrease. Will it go away automatically? No, but it's a step in the right direction for that to happen. Finally, just thank you so much to county staff, city staff, commissioners for taking the time and effort to really seriously consider this pilot program. I know it was a lot of work and it's appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Grant. Ann Milholland, followed by Amy Cubbage.
Ann Milholland, 2685 Benson Lane in Eugene. And I also want to thank commissioners and staff so much for working on this project of the car camping in the urbanizable zone.
This will allow more faith communities, businesses, and nonprofit organizations to offer locations for safe and legal temporary housing. Because it does not require the camper to move their vehicle every morning, and it does allow the stability of transitional housing. This stability facilitates the transition to more permanent housing, such as your wonderful Housing First efforts. However, I would encourage you to include the entire urban transition zone for Eugene and not limit the pilot program to only the River Road and Santa Clara area. It would allow a greater diversity of areas to participate, including the area in which I live, and it would allow far more efficient use of your time because it would apply to the entire zone rather than having to draw boundaries within that zone. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mulholland. Next is Amy Cubbage, followed by Thad Ames.
Good morning. My name is Amy Cubbage, and I work with Cornerstone Community Housing. I'm here to comment on the Beaver Hunsaker plan. So I work with Cornerstone. I don't live on Hunsaker, but we do have a property at 850 and 870 Hunsaker Lane. So Cornerstone, we're a community-based nonprofit organization. We operate here in Lane County, and we our mission is to prevent homelessness essentially by developing affordable housing. We also provide site-based services at our housing sites with the goal of helping residents live healthier lives and achieve economic independence. We have close to 500 apartments in the Eugene-Springfield area. So I mentioned that we have this one site on Hunsaker Lane, and a lot of our residents there actually do not have cars, so they're limited to walking and biking. We actually have a lot of young parents, moms with young kids who are carrying their babies either on the street or through areas that may not be as safe. And I know of one man in particular, an older gentleman who lives at the property. He walks every single day. It's great for his health, but we kind of cringe to see him to have to walk along the street where there's all this traffic going by, and it's really not safe. So the safety, accessibility, and connectivity is really important for our residents, and I think a lot of the residents on Hunsaker and Beaver Street. So we're very excited about the plan's recommendations. We appreciate the work that the county staff have done in engaging the public and putting together a thoughtful proposal. Think it will yield some great improvements, really improve the neighborhood. And so I'm here to offer support on behalf of Cornerstone, and thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Ms. Cubbage. Next is Thad Ames, followed by John Hagan.
Good morning. Thad Ames. I live on Hunsaker Lane. My house is actually located right on the S corners coming right out of it. And my main, I do support the proposal by the county staff with number one priority, if it was at all possible, closing down Beaver Street. I see if that happened, all the improvements to the road may not be necessary to save, and that would save a lot of money for Lane County. If that's not possible, obviously, I 100% support the proposal. One of the biggest things that's on, because I live right on those S corners, is safety. So I've had, just off the top of my head, 3 cars that had accidents either right at Echo or, which is my house is Echo and Hunsaker, or actually hit my tree that I won't cut down for that very reason, or take out my fence that I built so that my kids wouldn't go out on the street. So safety, especially coming out of those S corners, for whatever reason, people don't know how to handle their cars. Even with the speed limit at 35 miles an hour, they're still able to wrap cars around posts into trees and actually total them. There was one incident where a young girl got out in the street to grab her dog that had ran out of the house, whatever. A car had to slam on its brakes to not hit the girl, which then created a rear end scenario where cars were actually rear ending each other. It kind of sucks as a resident that lives on that street to have the decision to hit a car or hit a girl or get rear-ended. So something has to happen. I'm not sure if the plan that's proposed is going to go through. I hope it does, but if that doesn't happen, something needs to happen just for the safety of the residents on that street. Thank you. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Mr. Ames. John Hagan is the last person we have signed up today.
Hi, I'm John Hagan, live at 255 Hunsaker Lane, also own 245, 283 and 295. It's about 400 feet along Hunsaker. And, of course, I don't want you guys to take a whole bunch of property from me, but it sounds like it's going to happen. So the plan is to have sidewalks, bike lanes, water gardens. I really don't want water gardens in front of my house because all they do is grow great big weeds about 6 feet tall. So if we could get away without the water gardens, I would really appreciate it. Maybe make the sidewalk a foot wider so that the bike people can ride the sidewalks, and do away with the bike lanes so you don't take so much property. You know, there's a lot of people that live on that street, have trees. They've been there for years. You know, I hate to see my fir trees taken out and put flat leaf trees in, because then I'd have to rake the leaves. So anyway, on the subject of Hunsaker and River Road, last week there was 3 accidents there. I don't know if you guys knew that or not, but in 2 weeks before that, a friend of mine crashed in front of Shooters. And it's all because the left lane to the south is backed up from Beltline. You know, the little light there on Beltline that lets you on Beltline. What that's done is back the traffic up to River Road. I mean, in the mornings you can go, and it's almost halfway to Wilkes Drive. So, anyway, I got an email from Becky. It showed pictures of a plan that has the road going from Beaver to Wilkes, right next to the bike path that you guys okayed. And it seems like a real good idea to me, but Becky's boss, Dave, called me and said that that really wasn't a plan, but that's the first time I've seen that map. I think that's a glorious idea because it would spread the traffic down River Road. Anyway, thanks for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Hagan. That was the last person we have signed up for public testimony this morning. I would like to offer the opportunity for anyone else present to provide testimony before the Board of County Commissioners. Anyone else present would like to step to the mic? I see no one. I'll close the public comment period and open the mic to commissioners for response and or remonstrance. I see none. Then move along to item 4 on our agenda. Thank you for your testimony this morning, by the way. Excellent testimony. Any written material you'd like to provide for us to read later on, please feel free to do so. Next is emergency business. Mr. Mokrahewski, any emergency business today?
No, we have none.
To the board. I see no emergency business. We'll move along with employee recognition. Mr. Mokrahewski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm looking to see if Mr. Hasselman and okay. So why don't we do, we have 2 recognitions here, Mr. Chair. I'd like to invite Mary Miller and Lizzie Cunningham up here. Do we have anyone else from the Wellness Committee? No? Okay, so invite Mary and Lizzie to join me. And Mr. Chair and Commissioners, I think we let you know that last week the Portland Business Journal recognized the top healthiest employers in Oregon for 2017, and they categorized them based on size of organizations. There were, probably 300-400 people at the Hilton in Portland last week, and I had an opportunity along with Mary Miller and Ray Wuth-Takwabidi from our Wellness Committee and Marcia Edwards, our HR Director, to attend that and to see how Lane County would fare in that effort. Really pleased. I will tell you, first of all, the number one healthiest employer in the category of 500 to 1,500 employee size was Northwest Permanente. Number two was Safe Corporation. Do you know who number three was?
Let me guess.
Number three was Lane County. So Lane County was rated the number three healthiest employer in Oregon. And of all of the public agencies, Washington County, Marion County, City of Eugene, Port of Portland, the Salem Fire and Rescue District were all recognized as healthy employers, and Lane County was rated the highest of all public agencies in the state of Oregon. So we're really proud of this. I'll just name some others that were recognized: Moda Health, Pacific Source, Oregon Medical Group, Tuality Healthcare. Lane County ranked higher than all of those in terms of healthiest employers. Peace Health, Kaiser Permanente, HP, which employs 200,000 employees around the world, Providence Health and Services, Samaritan Health, Head Start of Lane County was recognized, Nautilus Incorporated. So just a sprinkling of a few of the public and private entities across Oregon that were recognized for this. And I just wanted to share with the commissioners, obviously we've had a significant focus on improving the health and wellness of our employees, and thereby improving productivity and time on the job, and also reducing costs. That's been a focus of ours over the past several years, and we've made a concerted effort to shift to a self-funded health plan, to open, under Mary's leadership, to open a new wellness clinic for our employees to access. And just, you know, a few things I'll note here. The goal of our wellness center has been to provide accessible, affordable, quality health care and wellness coaching for our 3,700 plan members. So our employees and their dependents that are, their partners and dependents that are on our health plan. We've seen, as a result of the wellness clinic that opened a year and a half ago, February of 2016, our wellness clinic opened. For patients that have participated in that wellness center, in the first year alone, we've seen a 47.1% improvement in those individuals' systolic BP. We've seen a 47.1% improvement in the average hemoglobin A1C, 35.3% improvement in diastolic BP, and a 23.5% improvement in individuals who have quit smoking as a result of their participation in our wellness clinic. So I want to recognize this award, and particularly recognize the people responsible for it, largely our Live Well committee members, headed by Mary Miller, our benefits and wellness manager, who's just done a phenomenal job over the past 3 years, 2.5, 3 years since you've been, almost 3 years that you've been on the job here. Lizzie Cunningham with Human Resources, who sadly is moving on. Her husband got a job out of state, and so we're really sorry to see Lizzie go. She's done a phenomenal job promoting our health and wellness activities, really the health challenges, the exercise challenges, the healthy eating challenges that we've done with our employees have been really well received. We've had increased participation and engagement from employees on that, and Lizzie has just been phenomenal for Lane County. So thank you so much for your service to our organization and community. Tekla Evanuk from Public Works, Amanda Steck from HR, Andrea Musicant from Health and Human Services, and Ray Wuth-Takwabidi from Public Works. All have been instrumental in that effort, and again, we just wanted to bring this forward to you and recognize the great work of our employees and the incredible recognition that we've received on a statewide level for the investments that we've made in providing access to quality health care for our employees, incentivizing health and wellness activities in our organization, and ultimately reducing costs for our organization and taxpayers. So congratulations to everyone who's participated, and Mary, thank you. Great job, Lizzie. Thank you.
Thank you, commissioners and Steve. One of the things that it's exciting to get awards. I love awards, and I think the whole county should take pride in receiving this because it's been our public health department's been helping on this. It's people all across the county. Our labor unions have assisted with what we needed to do to get this done. But the cool part about doing these types of nominations is we got an award last week, but we also have a roadmap for the next year. And we know where the few places we've maybe fell short, that we're going to work on those. And next year, maybe number one. Yeah. All right.
I like that. Lizzie?
You know, I think I'm leaving. Next week will be my last week at the county, but it's been an absolute pleasure of mine to work with Mary over the last 3 years. Her leadership in this area of our county has been critical. And I think that one of the biggest changes that I've seen really is we no longer manage programs like the way that we used to. I think with this process that Mary's developed, it really feels like employees come to the county and we're leading them through something. There's a goal here. Of course, we want to bring in the most talented workforce that we can, but we're developing them in other ways, in new ways that is going to make the county more successful by improving their health. And that's not something that we had before. I don't think that was a very large focus of the county's workforce and leadership team. So I've appreciated being able to help build that process and create something new. And I think Mary's right. We've laid a foundation, but this is just the beginning. There's still a lot we can improve on and a lot of new processes and programs that we can still develop.
Thank you, Lizzie, and thank you for your work through the years at Lane County. You know, Mary, when you first came on board, when I first met you 3 or so years ago, you started talking about a healthier climate, a healthier work environment, and a healthier body of staff. And you had some ideas right from the very beginning. My key concern that I had all along was incentivizing staff to do it. How do you get people to get up and do the healthy things, make changes in their lives, which sometimes is small, sometimes are very large for them and their entire family? Well, Mr. Mokrajewski said that you have incentivized staff to do such, and you've actually put in place programs that really give people a reason to participate in the healthy activities and the healthy programs that you've outlined. And since you came, we've also adopted a health in all policies program with Lane County, so that any policy that we adopt, there's a health statement involved in the health in all policies plan that we have. So it just makes me proud of the work that we do at Lane County, and the fact that we're number 3. And who were number 1 and number 2 again? Can you say that?
Number 1 in our group was Northwest Permanente, and number 2 was Safe Corporation.
Both of whom are integral health agencies, and we are a general government agency. So very well done, outstanding. To the board. Thank you very much.
And just one other comment, Mr. Chair. Mary mentioned the partnership with our bargaining units. Of course, we have 7 bargaining units, and we've gone through the process of negotiating with all of our bargaining units. And 5 of those groups, the prosecuting attorneys, the parole and probation bargaining unit, the deputies union, 626 and Admin Pro, the 2 public works unions, have all agreed to, and then for all new non-represented employees that are hired after January 1, 2016, are all on this newer plan that, again, really focuses on incentivizing use of the wellness clinic by having some modest premiums in place, but a waiver of a portion of those premiums if employees go at least once a year and receive a biometric screening and meet with the nurse practitioner, do some health coaching. So we've really taken the approach of incentivizing that participation and encouraging health and wellness through promotion and incentives rather than punitive measures, and I think that approach has really worked. And we had as part of our internship program, a student from the University of Oregon analyzed data of our employee population to determine that for every 1% increase in health focus of our employees, so participation in healthy behaviors, and a 1% increase in employees that are participating in healthy behaviors, we achieve a 5% increase in employee engagement, meaning we have increased performance, attendance, satisfaction, and reduced cost. So this is an investment that, from the public standpoint, taxpayers may go, why do we care about this? It's great to have healthy employees, but it really does impact the morale, performance, and cost with which we're able to provide service. So I just want to share that all those things are connected, that it really has been a team effort working with our employees, bargaining units, leadership in the organization, and we're going to keep charging forward and look forward to be number one, hopefully next year. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. And Sun Tzu said the best way to win a battle is to never have to fight it. The best way to be healthy is to never get sick. Thank you very much.
Okay, Mr. Chair, I'm going to invite Eric Hasselman and District Attorney Patty Perlow. I think I see him over there. Come on up. I know they were, this is difficult, of course, for leadership in the DA's office to come over, and it's always busy. I really appreciate your time here today, and we're really pleased to recognize Eric. I'll make a few comments if that's okay, just Attorney Perlow, and then if you'd like to make some additional comments about. He doesn't know why he's here? No. Maybe we should tell him. He's like, why am I here? What are you putting me on the spot for?
Why am I here? I thought I was. Well, I won't tell you what I was told I was here for. So.
Oh, this makes it even more fun. So we're recognizing Eric today for it. First of all, I think commissioners, you all have had an opportunity to get to know Eric and his leadership. He's just a phenomenal resource to the District Attorney's Office and to Lane County as a whole. And he was recognized. Eric is the Chief Deputy District Attorney in the DA's office. And he was recently presented with the 10th Annual 2016 Wildlife Prosecutor of the Year Award during the Oregon District Attorneys Association Summer Training Conference. And I think you all know Eric as a leading force in carrying out District Attorney Perlow's can-do approach to prosecuting viable felonies and utilizing limited resources that we have here in Lane County to make our community safer. Eric has been really a leading force in that effort. And on top of that, he is passionate about working to support fish, wildlife, and natural resources in the state. And he was nominated for this award by the Oregon State Police South Valley Fish and Wildlife Team, as he's shown a vested interest in protecting Oregon's natural resources. He's considered a member of the team and is in constant communication with troopers about fish and wildlife cases he hears about even before the reports arrive at the DA's office. And as the Chief Deputy, of course, we know that he's responsible for handling serious person crimes, and he has much on his plate, but he takes fish and wildlife cases with enthusiasm and holds violators accountable for their unlawful actions. He actively puts out press releases to inform the community on poaching cases, and through his vigorous prosecution has people talking about the penalties for poaching, which creates an effective deterrent factor for potential offenders. Mr. Hasselman shares the passion and commitment each of the troopers have for protecting fish, wildlife, and natural resources in the state. And again, he was nominated and awarded by the Oregon Sportsmen's Coalition, by the Oregon State Police Fish and Wildlife Division. So we wanted to invite Eric here today and surprise him and embarrass him apparently a little bit with a certificate in recognition for his outstanding leadership and recognition with this award, and our great appreciation for all the wonderful work that you do. Thank you.
Despite Eric's responsibilities to manage the office and handle pretty much all of the public records requests that come in from the U of O, extradition requests, it's an endless list of things that Eric is responsible for in the office. He still, despite being discouraged from taking a large caseload, continues to take a large caseload, including these fish and wildlife violations that our office had not prosecuted for years. It's because of Eric's passion for the natural resources of Oregon and his relationships with the state police and the investigators there, that he continues to succeed in that effort. In fact, just recently had another one. And so, or another case that's coming to conclusion. And so I appreciate the board very much for recognizing Eric.
Thank you, DA Perlow. Eric.
Thank you, Commissioner Farr, and the rest of the board. I loved my job. I love doing my job. Part of there's nothing that we do in working with the police to enforce the existing laws that's not important. And I really appreciate that District Attorney Perlow has taken the position that to the extent our staff can handle it, that we resume prosecutions on everything that affects the quality of life, even some of these smaller nuisance crimes, and in this particular case, the fish and wildlife crimes that really impact our community, our way of life. You know, a lot of our land is outdoor land. It's recreational access land, even land that's privately held, like Weyerhaeuser, Roseburg, they all open that up or to some degree to recreational opportunities. And there are people that are negatively impacting the fairness of that by their poaching activities, by them, using methods, obviously, that harvest and deplete our resources. So it's something that I have a personal interest in, as Patty indicated. The state police have been very responsive, to having somebody in our office to do this. They've upped their game as far as investigating cases that they were previously discouraged because they went nowhere. And so thank you for the opportunity. I appreciate that you've kept our funding level at a level that I don't have to be here till midnight every night, or our lawyers don't, but we still have a very dedicated staff that is overwhelmed with the work that we have to do, and so making sure that we're maintained at least the status quo we have been has enabled us to do this. So thank you very much.
That's why Eric thinks we're here, is to show our appreciation for you funding our office completely.
Yes, so I am. I am, and it does. Like I said, it allows us to address those things that really do impact the quality of life of our citizens out there. And so thank you for allowing us to do what we've signed up to do. I appreciate it.
Well, Assistant DA Hasselman, we'll be talking next week about how you personally, with your good work, affect your budget for the DA's office. We have a number of issues that will come before the board next week to discuss that. The other thing I'll say is it's particularly frustrating for those of us who do fish and or hunt to see people violating the laws and actually acting as scofflaws because they know they're not going to be prosecuted. Well, those days are over in Lane County. I'm glad to see and hear, and I would presume that it's going to ultimately result in less people violating. In the meantime, the numbers don't show that because we have more prosecutions. But very proud of the work and very proud to be a part of Lane County moving forward with this. Commissioner Bozovich.
Thank you, and I just want to say thank you to Eric and to DA Perlow for the work that you guys have done. And I know the long hours you guys have put in, and it's made a difference. I mean, you're thanking us for our investment in the DA staff. We owe you thanks for the hard work you've done to up the amount of prosecutions and add to the population that we have under supervision. It also enables us to populate things like our treatment court and our veterans court and mental health court. Without those prosecutions, those aren't people that are eligible to go through those programs and really change their lives. And, Commissioner Farr made a kind of veiled reference to next week's agenda. We're going to be talking about the Community Corrections Justice Reinvestment Grant and the Measure 57 and 3098 budgets next week, which all are impacted by that percentage of people we have under supervision that you guys have helped build. And therefore, we actually have more money this year in those state programs to put into all these various programs that divert people from prison, keep them out of our jail and into mental health treatment. all these great programs we're doing to help people reintegrate into society through sponsors, that funding is dependent on the hard work that you guys do up front. And I just want to say thank you for that. And on top of adding to all that workload, you're managing to protect our wildlife, and that resource there is just pretty amazing.
Thank you. Commissioner Williams and Commissioner Larkin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Eric, congratulations on your hard work. This is but another example of how far the District Attorney's Office has come in a short period of time. Prosecuting people that need to be prosecuted effectively, and then this example of a critical need and that need being met. So thank you to the District Attorney's Office, thank you to Eric, and congratulations.
Yeah, thank you,
Commissioner Sorensen.
Thanks so much. You know, I was reading the newspaper and saw where a judge had been shot somewhere in the country. And I know that the threats that are made against the people in the DA's office are real. It just highlighted for me, you know, that we have people throughout Lane County government that work in very dangerous jobs. Most obviously, they're deputy sheriffs and our parole and probation officers, but I know that people in the DA's office are also exposed to this kind of threats, and so on top of everything else that's been said today about highlighting the importance of doing the very best we can with the resources we have, and I do think, you know, that's been a really remarkable change since District Attorney Perlow's been here. It's a real can-do attitude, and you're just you know, the first person in the change of command that really puts that into effect. I really appreciate that, Eric, about your can-do attitude, and you're very deserving of both the state award as well as this one. But as we know, it's always a team effort, and there's lots of people out there, the clerical staff, the other assistant district attorneys, all of the people working as a team up there doing a really great job. And we're just the representatives of the 370,000 people of Lane County that benefit from this kind of efficiency and hard work. And especially like in this wildlife area, you know, it really is horrible to think that there are people out there that just, you know, blow off all these rules that are intended to protect, you know, the rivers, the streams, the wildlife, the fish, the, you know, the deer, and I think it's great that this renewed effort at your level has also resulted in the investigation and the policing that's out there. Those wildlife officers do a great job, but they can't do their job unless we all help them. So thanks so much.
Thank you, Commissioner Sorensen. Excuse me, Commissioner Lycan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have nothing more to add other than the fact that you do have an uncanny ability to hire some of Springfield PD's finest to come to work for Lane County, so I've noticed that. But and I'm glad you have, because I know them well, and they're excellent folks. So I would totally agree, and I'm glad they're here. And but that's impressive in itself. And I don't know if people know, but Eric has a great family, and had a pleasure of meeting some of his family members, and so I just a great family. So that's all I have to say, but thank you very much for your service, your excellent work here on behalf of Lane County, and I would just really agree. I love the can-do attitude to DA Perlow. I just can't say enough. And with your chief deputy Eric right here along your side, it is the changing environment you can see, and it's impressive. And I just want to say thank you very much. Kind of reminds me a little bit of Springfield, so that's that can-do spirit. So I like it. Anyway, thank you.
And one last thank you is something that DA Perlow alluded to, and that's you take on an ever-increasing workload or caseload. And thank you to you and your fellow assistant DAs for doing that exact, stepping up to the plate and prosecuting more cases and making Lane County a safer place to live. So thank you, DA Perlow.
Everyone's busy, but I certainly appreciate all the kind comments from each of the commissioners. Thank you very much.
Come back anytime.
A surprise kept from the chief deputy.
How did that happen?
And now I'm on the Brady list for lying.
Thank you. Now we have before us our consent calendar. All items listed on the consent calendar are considered routine by the Board of Commissioners and will be enacted by a single motion. There'll be no separate discussion of each item, but if anyone in the audience or watching on broadcast wishes to view the items that we are taking action on today, they can go to our website, click View Item, and you can see the entire documentation of what we're enacting today. So we have before us the consent calendar. Do I have a motion? Commissioner Bozievich.
So I'll move approval of the August 22nd, 2017 consent calendar.
Second.
Moved by Commissioner Bozievich, seconded by Commissioner Lyken. Discussion to the motion. I see no discussion. I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Passes unanimously. Now we have a 10 o'clock time certain, and we're just a couple of minutes before, so we should be able to get started right on time. Our 10 o'clock time certain is Order 1708-22-05 in the matter of adopting the Beaver-Hunsaker Corridor Plan. And today we have Becky Taylor.
Good morning. Thank you, Chair Farr, Commissioners. I'm Becky Taylor, Senior Transportation Planner with Lane County. With me is my supervisor, David Reeser, and in the audience, City of Eugene staff, Chris Henry. And if you'll give me just a moment, I will upload our PowerPoint presentation.
We're still ahead of the time certain, Becky. So David, welcome to Harris Hall this morning. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. All recovered from the drive back watching the eclipse. So.
All right. Well, I was in the middle of the Willamette River for that. So.
How was the traffic management for that?
Oh boy, it was, I-5 was pretty rough. We actually avoided I-5 on the way back, so.
Okay,
Very good.
Thank you.
We are ready to move forward order 1708-2205.
In addition to the comments you heard at 9 o'clock on this item, also before you at your places is a letter of support from Peter Thurston. This item before the board is an order to adopt the Beaver-Hunsaker Corridor Plan, and this is within Commissioner Bozevich's district. And I want to thank Commissioner Bozevich for his guidance and his community engagement throughout the process. This plan was developed with federal funding awarded to Lane County in order to guide future transportation investments in the study area, to provide clarity for the community, and to coordinate with multiple agencies conducting transportation planning activities in the area. This is just the first step of planning and design for future infrastructure changes. This plan will be followed by future design refinements based on past, current, and future public input and technical analysis. Additional funding will be needed for these future steps. Eugene, Oregon Department of Transportation, and Lane Transit District staff were all involved in this process to coordinate other planning activities in the study area, such as ODOT's Beltline Facility Plan, Eugene's Transportation System Plan, and Lane Transit District's new station proposed at Hunsaker and River Road. And we'll touch on these in the upcoming slides. First, to clarify the study area, the study involves two corridors. Beaver-Hunsaker, which is an existing Lane County road located between Division Avenue and River Road, and Beaver-Wilkes, which does not exist but was illustrated as a potential connection in the future in the 2001 Trans Plan. Trans Plan, just for reference, was the shared transportation system plan for the cities of Eugene and Springfield. And as you know, the cities now have their own separate transportation system plans. The Eugene TSP recommended an urban upgrade of Beaver-Hunsaker, but did not identify the need for a new street between Beaver-Wilkes. Lane County pursued this study to engage the abutting property owners and residents and evaluate technical design alternatives. As part of the study, Lane County evaluated the Beaver-Wilkes connection, which runs outside the UGB, and based on this study, it did not prove feasible, which we'll talk about in more detail later.
As mentioned, the study was also necessary to coordinate multiple agency planning efforts in the vicinity. Both the Beltline Facility Plan and the Eugene TSP recommend the construction of a new local arterial bridge across the Willamette River to the north of Beltline. This bridge would connect people across the river who choose to drive, take transit, walk, or bike across the river. East of the river, the new bridge is envisioned to connect Green Acres Road, Delta Highway intersection. On the west side, it will connect to Beaver Street. The recommendations in this plan are consistent with both the Eugene TSP and Beltline Facility Plan efforts conducted to date. ODOT is beginning to review potential design options at a number of city and county intersections along Beltline. The intersection of the new bridge with Beaver Street is pending ODOT's National Environmental Policy Act, or NEPA, process. This process will include extensive public outreach, and Lane County will continue to be involved in the Beltline planning efforts to ensure continued coordination. We'll touch on this again in the upcoming slides when we show the recommended design for Beaver Street. Lane Transit District, or LTD, is also planning to develop the property at the southeast corner of Hunsaker Lane and River Road to include a new transit station. The proposed bike and pedestrian facilities along Hunsaker will allow safe access to and from the transit station. At the time of development, LTD will coordinate with the county to provide appropriate intersection and site frontage improvements. The plan's recommendations are the outcome of both technical analysis and public feedback gathered through numerous activities, including a project webpage, direct mailings to abutting properties, email updates to interested parties, stakeholder interviews, several neighborhood meetings with the Santa Clara Neighborhood Organization, public surveys, a public workshop, and presentations to interested committees such as the Central Lane Metropolitan Policy Committee, or MPC, Eugene's Active Transportation Advisory Committee, and Lane County's Transportation Advisory Committee, or the TRAC. Public participation has been high throughout. Over 45 people attended the open house, and most recently, approximately 20 people attended the July 26 TRAC public hearing, of which 13 provided public testimony. And through this, we have heard consistent themes in the process. Transportation safety and potential impacts have been common concerns. At the same time, we have heard that the status quo is not working. An example of this is the letter of support we received from the Santa Clara Neighborhood Organization, as well as from others. These are all included in your packet, in addition to the testimony you heard today. Regarding safety, many people expressed concern about vehicle volumes and speeds. As we'll discuss in the upcoming slides, the design concepts are intended to reduce vehicle speeds and increase safety for everyone moving through the corridor, whether driving, walking, or biking. As the community grows, traffic volumes will continue to increase regardless of whether this plan is implemented or not. However, the design recommendations intend to give people a safer option to move through the corridor, specifically with bike lanes and sidewalks and the potential to reduce travel speeds. We also heard some public comments that requested immediate closure of Beaver Street from Division Avenue and Beltline traffic. This is likely not a transportation option given the transportation system plan connectivity policies. However, the upcoming ODOT Beltline NEPA process will more thoroughly look at this intersection connection and involve stakeholders in the public in that final decision. Again, we have heard a lot of concerns from the public about traffic speeds in this corridor. Future design refinements will help us look at ways of designing these streets in a way to slow traffic speeds down. Regarding property impacts, future design refinements outside this initial plan will allow us to minimize the to the best degree possible while still staying true to the project's intent. The track recommended the board adopt the plan as presented with special consideration to slowing traffic speeds and minimizing property impacts when possible. Again, we look forward to working closely with local residents and property owners along the corridor to involve them in those refinements.
Okay, the plan recommendations for Hunsaker Lane. The greatest need for this corridor is to improve safety by reducing vehicle speeds and providing space for people to walk and bike. People living on the corridor are concerned with traffic volumes and speeds. Some people said they feel their life is in jeopardy every time they check their mailboxes, and others said they would not let their children walk or bike along the roadway. The plan recommendations respond to these concerns with the following design elements. One is keeping the roadway narrow for vehicles with one travel lane in each direction. Second, providing physical space for people to walk and bicycle. Currently, people wishing to walk or bike must travel in the vehicle lane or along a narrow gravel shoulder. The plan recommends adding sidewalks and bike lanes throughout the corridor. The design for these facilities will vary along the corridor. Additional design work is necessary to identify the appropriate locations for transitioning their proposed setback sidewalk to a curb-tight sidewalk in order to minimize property impacts, such as including parking bays or preserving existing significant vegetation. And thirdly, by installing raised crosswalks with flashing beacons throughout the corridor. We know that people walking are most vulnerable when crossing the street, and the only signalized intersection within the corridor is at River Road. Elevated crosswalks with pedestrian-activated beacons throughout the corridor have the co-benefit of slowing and stopping vehicles, which will further mitigate the safety concerns with vehicle speeds. The crossing locations and details are not defined by this plan, as additional design work is needed to confirm the appropriate placement when other design elements are determined, such as catch basins, driveways, and utilities. Similar conditions exist along Beaver Street. Several residents expressed concern with the new Beltline Bridge being 2 lanes in each direction and connecting directly to Beaver Street. ODOT staff indicates that their design has not been completed, and they will continue to work with Lane County to facilitate a transition between their project and the recommendations of this plan. For example, the bridge could connect at Beaver with a roundabout and transition to single vehicle lanes. As shown here, the plan recommends a single vehicle lane in each direction with an overall street width of 21 feet. This narrower pavement width is desired by the City of Eugene to minimize impervious surface area and because narrow travel lanes have been proven to reduce vehicle speeds. The goal is to reduce the posted speed to 25 miles per hour. And we have also confirmed with the fire marshal that they just need 20 feet of clear width, which is met with this design recommendation, which has no on-street parking. The vehicle volumes and speeds are higher for northbound traffic, shown here to the far right, whereas the left lane has lower volumes and southbound traffic. For that reason, we feel it is acceptable to have a curb-tight sidewalk along the southbound lane. This area is constrained by the utility poles you see here, and existing residences are much closer along this side of the street. This would be offset by a wider 12-foot wide multi-use path on the northbound side of the street, directly abutting Delta Sand and Gravel, as Delta has indicated a willingness to provide the extra space needed for the path, which would also enable this multi-use path to connect to the existing path on Division Avenue with a future path to Wilkes Drive, which is also recommended by the plan and which I'll talk about in the next slide. As was indicated in the testimony this morning, there's apparently some confusion about the gray dashed line shown here. This is a recommendation for a bike path, not a street. This is the Beaver Wilkes portion of the plan. And the greatest need for this corridor is to improve access, connectivity, and safety for people who choose to walk, bike, or drive. Since this corridor is predominantly located outside of the urban growth boundary, transportation facilities are subject to Oregon administrative rules, and this state law allows bikeways, footpaths, and recreational trails outside the UGB. However, other transportation improvements are subject to a limited set of conditions. An analysis of those conditions concluded that there is insufficient evidence to comply with the criteria for a new street, and the details of this analysis are included in your agenda packet as attachment 3. As such, this plan does not recommend a new street connection. Instead, the plan recommends a new multi-use path be constructed to generally follow the UGB along Beaver Street to Admiral Street, which connects to Wilkes Drive.
So for next steps, the board's adoption of the plan will endorse the design recommendations, which will provide certainty for the public and direction to staff for design refinements in future construction. Additional funding is needed to refine these conceptual designs and construct improvements. The plan does not identify future funding, but will help the county compete for state and federal funds to complete these next steps. Staff recommends the board adopt the plan as presented, which is option 1 of the 3 alternatives listed in your agenda packet. And since this is being broadcast on the web, we've provided this slide here for additional contact information about the project, including Becky Taylor's contact information as the project manager, and then also our project website. And with that, we'll leave it open for any questions or direction you'd like to give us.
Great presentation, thank you, and good work that went into this. I'm going to turn it over first to Commissioner Bozevich, who was integral in working with the neighbors and working with staff on the plan. Commissioner Bozevich.
Thank you. So I believe the presentation brought out most of what the plan had looked at and what it determined we couldn't do. Probably the biggest question for a lot of people was, why we couldn't build that north-south street between Wilkes and Beaver. And I think if folks actually read the analysis in there, they can gain that understanding. But that was kind of my first go-to is, that would take a lot of traffic off of Hunsaker and provide that north-south connection. It could also provide a way for cyclists to get north-south, along with that road connection. But there was a lot of issues. One, crossing over some Goal 5 resource lands owned by Delta Sand and Gravel, and also with the going outside the UGB and back into the UGB with an urban facility and the issues with the various state transportation laws that impacts. So I'll leave it to people to maybe go to the plan document and read why that street wasn't included in that. But what I will note is the work that staff did, particularly with the neighbors that live along Hunsaker, and modifying the street configuration. And that's probably the biggest piece of this plan, and the one I'd like to highlight right now. As you looked at, if you want to roll back to maybe the Hunsaker plan there, as you look at that, that is not the way we were building streets 20 years ago. I mean, 20 years ago, the idea was the wider the better. You move traffic and all that. And you can go back and look at Irvington and Irving Road improvements for how we used to do things. And you folks from Santa Clara all recognize that, and too bad Jerry left. But his house actually had to be moved for the Irvington Road improvements back off the street because he literally lost all of his front yard. This kind of goes to a much more, to a different place with street planning, where we're narrowing travel lanes, placing buffers, and if you could sort of describe what's running down the edge of that in that what keeps that buffer from the bike lane and the travel lane there? Is that, you know, it looks like a little hump or something. Is that an actual physical barrier, or is that just a delineation there?
At this point, it's envisioned to be just paint, which provides some physical space if needed for, say, two large trucks passing each other. But those details haven't been determined yet, whether we'll have some sort of physical separation.
But for the mentality of a driver, studies have shown that just having that paint in a narrower lane will actually slow traffic.
That's right.
And that's really the real issue there, because I've driven Hunsaker enough times. I've walked Hunsaker multiple times while campaigning. And it's a scary street to walk along. It's scary enough just to cross, but there's places where the vegetation and some of the shrubbery, literally you have to walk into the drive lane to get around some of those shrubs, because there is no shoulder. The fog line basically is right up against hedges, and it's not a very safe street. But that desire to reduce the impact to the neighborhood and to also to constrain the vehicles to a slower traffic volume led to this 55-foot right-of-way, which really doesn't take, I mean, what's the existing right-of-way width in that area?
It varies between 40 and 60 feet.
So the max we might be taking in some areas is an additional 15 feet if the project were to be funded in its current configuration, which, you know, might be 7.5 from each side, or it might be a total 15 all from one, but we don't know right at this point. But it's not like we're asking for people to give up a lot of right-of-way, but this compact design does several things, and providing that traffic calming with the narrow lanes, the ability for cyclists to get either way. I know when I have to get from the river bike path into the river loop route that I like to do to get up to Beacon, the only, you know, there's a stretch you have to ride before you can turn right and get into the neighborhood. And that's always one of the scariest little pieces of riding you can do on a bicycle is that section of Hunsaker. So having a safe bike lane, having the safe sidewalks, having the raised crosswalks will be another thing that will slow traffic, I believe, in that area. And it's important because, you know, this does feed Madison Middle School and is part of our whole county push to get safe routes to school and get kids to use, you know, alternative transportation that's healthier for them, like cycling and walking, instead of the parents always having to drive them to the doorstep. It's really kind of a whole important aspect of where the board wants to go with our transportation planning. So I think this picture alone shows how, you know, the development of the plan over time, and people, if they were to go to the first meetings we had on this, I think, and look at some of the proposed designs, that's a lot less impact than some of the original designs, because they were more on the line of Irving and Irvington Road, where you guys were looking at, you know, 12, 13-foot drive lanes, 6-foot bike lanes, setback sidewalks, and everything else. And by the time you got done, it was, you know, 70 feet of impact instead of 55. So well done in listening to the neighborhood on that. And I think, you know, ultimately the issues of whether Division Avenue connects with Beaver and the new bridge and Beltline, that's going to be a question for the future that ODOT will have to deal with in the NEPA process and how that works out. But many of those designs kind of discourage the movement from the Division Avenue exit onto Beaver that I've seen, at least in the alternative analysis, where they don't have a free flow. They're more encouraged to end up on Division Avenue than they are to Beaver. The traffic circle just being one of the alternatives there. So we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. But I really appreciate the work that was done to come to this, and also appreciate the multi-use path along Beaver and the future connection to the north. I think that's going to do amazing things for the cycling community and also for safe routes to school.
I think Mr. New agrees with you. Thank you, Commissioner Bozevich. Commissioner Lycan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Commissioner Bozevich, thank you for the going through the details of that. And Becky, very good. And David, very good presentation. Really appreciate it. This is one of those areas that I was clearly going to take Commissioner Bozevich's lead on this one. It's a rare time when I actually am in there in this area. And in fact, I usually take River Road when I'm on my way out to Shadow Hills. That's just really what it is for me. I spend most of my time on the other side of the freeway, and so I appreciate that. One of the most fascinating plans I've ever seen, because there's a reason why it's called Beltline. One of the most fascinating plans, and I got to see the original plan from 1960, I think, was Beltline. Beltline was a belt that encompassed all of Eugene Springfield. In fact, it went right to the base of Mount Pisgah. Think about that for a second. I saw it. The former unofficial mayor of Glenwood, Steve Moe, had a copy of that. And I'm sure Commissioner Sorensen's probably seen it as well. It's really fascinating to see if that was ever built, what this would have looked like. This whole area would have been completely different. So those accidents weren't necessarily set up for the gravel companies. They were set up because that was the plan, original plan, to build this huge belt line completely around Eugene Springfield for the traffic congestion issues that they were planning for. And for various reasons, it didn't happen. Dollars, I think a lot of, as the EPA was formed and the protections of this type of thing with the different plants and animals in place, it just wasn't going to happen. But it was a fascinating plan to see what the original Beltline would have looked like in this area. It would have changed and transformed Eugene Springfield into something far different than what we see today. Very, very fascinating. But on this plan, I really appreciate the dedicated work, not only by staff, Commissioner Bozevich, but obviously looking at who's involved. You have folks that live there, the neighbors. We heard the testimony today. And is there a perfect answer to this? No. Is this a good start? I would say absolutely, based on what is there. And hopefully this is something that we can move forward on. I support it. I think it's important. It's a way to get started. And I think any time you want to kind of change things up, it's we had an issue that on South 42nd Street, while it was clearly different than this, that used to be the truck route. And until a little boy was killed there. And then we put a lot of passion into that. Now it's not a truck route. It's now part of, South 42nd is part of a street within the city of Springfield now. And so, but at one time, it was very dangerous. You didn't have bike lanes, you had nothing. And today you have curb cuts, you have bike lanes, you have sidewalks, and now it's a neighborhood street. And because of the tremendous amount of passion we put into that, after the Daniel Lindsay, boy, do I remember him completely. Little boy who died before the age of 7 and put probably the most profound impact on me as a public servant I've ever had. And but I think anytime you see this and you hear folks talking about the accidents that are occurring, and the last thing you want to see are deaths. So that's why I think this is a good start, and I really appreciate the work that's gone into this. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Lycan. Further discussion, board? Commissioner Williams.
Thank you, Chair Farr. Question, as I look at the photograph on the left there, I see utility poles. And can you talk a little bit about utilities within the right-of-way?
I actually don't have details about what we're going to do with those utility poles yet. We'll need to work with the utility companies when we get to the next step of design details. Whether those are going to be undergrounded or relocated is yet to be determined, but definitely something we need to work on.
So down the paved roadway stretch that we look at, are there utilities under the roadbed?
There are. There's wastewater pipes under the roadway, for example. I'm sure water, other things. We haven't done that level of investigation yet.
Okay, thank you.
If I may, Commissioner, excuse me, I was just going to add to that as well that we will be working very closely with the City of Eugene as we go through future design refinements, because ultimately the plan would be to partner together, seek some funding, get this funded for final design and someday construction, and then go forward with a jurisdictional transfer. So things like the utilities and stuff, we would definitely work with the city on that.
And I see Chris Henry in the room today. Thank you for being here today, Mr. Henry. So thank you, Commissioner Williams. Further discussion? Just a couple of things I'll mention. The bike path that goes basically along the urban growth boundary, that Delta Highway will cede some property to allow that to happen. I would assume that that will connect with the bike path that's on the other side of Beltline Road by looping under Beltline Road. That's the South Bank Willamette bike path in the Ruth Bascom system.
That's correct.
So that'll make a great connector to Wilkes Drive and beyond. Just a very pleasant ride also. Very good. And the last thing that I'll mention is that this plan does not forsake the fact that if you miss the Beltline Bridge, the next bridge over the Willamette is in Harrisburg. So, the fact is, at some point, we're looking at building another local traffic bridge. Our bridges in Eugene are not local traffic bridges. Ferry Street Bridge, I guess, is somewhat of a local traffic bridge, but we have the I-5, we have Delta Highway, we have Beltline Road, all freeways. And so adding a local traffic bridge is high on the radar screen at this point in time, and this plan does not forsake that future planning by ODOT and by the City of Eugene and by Lane County. So thanks for the work on this. Excellent. So moving forward, then we have a motion. The motion before us is Order 1708-22-05 in the matter of adopting the Beaver-Hunsaker Corridor Plan. Commissioner Bozievich.
So I'd like to move approval of Order 1708-2205.
Second.
Moved by Commissioner Bozievich, seconded by Commissioner Lycan. Discussion to the motion. Commissioner Lycan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Commissioner Bozievich, I'm assuming this is option 1, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you, Commissioner Lycan. Option 1. Further discussion to the motion? I see none. I will call for the vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Passes unanimously. Thank you. And thank you for the work to the neighbors, and thanks for all of the great input. I'm loving that 12-foot multi-purpose route on the, I guess it's the west side of Beaver. Very well done. Thank you. We are slightly ahead of schedule, but that's not a bad thing. We'll move along to item 8A, Health and Human Services, Order 1708-22-06, in the matter of accepting intergovernmental agreements from the cities of Eugene and Springfield for human services for fiscal year 2018 for the Department of Health and Human Services. Now, originally, Ms. Gaffney, this was on our consent calendar, but I requested that it be pulled off because I wanted to highlight the fact that Lane County and the municipalities work very closely together to provide the best bang for our buck, the best use of our resources in human services. And that's what this discussion is going to be about today, is how are we utilizing our limited resources on human services. So, Mr. Mokrzycki, with your permission, I'll turn this over to Ms. Gaffney.
And just, if it's all right, I'll just make a brief introductory comment here to say that we've really worked with Steve's leadership and certainly Karen's involvement and leadership now to continue to strengthen the partnership with the City of Eugene and City of Springfield on both our financial investments and the coordination that we have around human services in the community. I think it's been really successful over the last couple of years. Steve and his staff have done a fantastic job of developing and quantifying both the resources that the public agencies locally, Eugene, Springfield, Lane County, are contributing towards the Human Service Commission, the amount of state and federal resources that we're leveraging, millions of dollars, and I know that he'll touch on this, that we're leveraging and really fostering, I think, a thoughtful conversation with our public agencies moving forward. I think we're still seeking to develop an objective, data-driven formula, which we don't have currently, that determines the amount of resources contributed by each agency. It's fair to say that Lane County contributes 50% of the total local resources. Eugene contributes about 43%, and Springfield about 7%. of the funding. And in addition to that, Lane County provides about $12 million in additional resources in human services through other areas that we provide. And so just want to say that as sort of an introductory comment, that this partnership is, I think, really positive and effective, and we're going to continue to build that partnership going forward.
And that is exactly why I did not want to let this pass as a consent calendar item. Sorry to bring you in for this item this morning, Mr. Manella, but it's a great opportunity.
They were trying to make this a quick item, so I bursted that effort. I know, blown that out of the water. So I apologize, but I wanted to just take an opportunity to thank Steve and Karen and their staff for the great work that they continue to do.
And it's not a quick item. You know, Mr. Manella, you remember back in 1995 when Ruth Bascom first appointed me to the Human Services Commission. You were a much younger man then, obviously, and I don't think your hair was out here at that point in time, but it was. We both had a little more than we have today. So, Ms. Gaffney.
Thank you, Chair Farr and Commissioners. And really, my smile for the county administrator wasn't so much that he made the item longer, but that he took a lot of my introductory comments. So that's no, it's all good. It actually, when I thought about this item, you're right, Chair Farr. This typically would be considered a routine item of business for the county, and that in of itself is worth pausing and celebrating. That we've been doing this interjurisdictional work with the cities of Eugene and Springfield for more than 3 decades now. I think really setting the tone for acknowledging that much of our work is more effective and more impactful if we can do it together. And so I appreciate the opportunity today to really pause and acknowledge the work that we do collaboratively with the cities, not only that we've done for the last decades, but really the exciting work that we're envisioning moving forward. So without any more introductory comments, I'm going to let Steve talk about the item.
Good morning, Chair Farr, Board of Commissioners. This intergovernmental partnership we have for human services, when it began in the 1970s, was very unique to have 2 cities and a major county collaborate together in providing human services. What it's done over the years is that it's provided a foundation for many of the nonprofits that exist in the community. Nonprofits like Food for Lane County, Looking Glass, Willamette Family Treatment, and others would not be as stable as they are today without the work of our local jurisdictions. The Human Services Commission provides an avenue for local jurisdictions to address gaps in the community. When there were people, when we had 60,000 residents without health care, we worked on a qualified health center. Today, when we have many of our residents who are yearning for affordable housing, we're working on affordable housing. So it's been an avenue for us collectively to get together. Also, this model is very administratively efficient. We spend generally around 7% of all the funding we receive on administration. By pooling our resources as 3 jurisdictions, we can more effectively provide services for people in our community. And then finally, I wanted to mention is the sort of the breadth of what we do and how many lives we touch. Currently, we're serving about 58,000 county residents a year through this partnership with local nonprofits. And while we would like to see those numbers going down, we do have many people in our community who, by getting a little bit of assistance, this provides them with a more stable life for them and their families. So I appreciate all the work that the board has done in support of this, and I want to appreciate Commissioner Farr and Commissioner Bosevich for their work on the Human Services Commission. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Manella. Discussion. Then Commissioner Bosevich.
Thanks. I just want to take a moment just to say, I was probably least familiar with the Human Services Commission when I came on as commissioner. having an engineering background, I was real familiar with public works stuff and all that. But getting to serve actually on the commission's been a great education. And it's been interesting because it also kind of dovetails into my position with the Public Safety Coordinating Council. And what's been very interesting is the same folks that are around the table in the human services side are also there at the Public Safety Coordinating Council. And there's a lot of interaction between the two. And in particular, with the frequent user system engagement pilot that we've got going with shelter care, actually came to me as an idea through Chief Pete Kearns at PSCC, where EPD started tracking their 100 or their 50 most frequent users, and we're working with folks to try and, with like Cahoots and other people, to try and deal with some of those frequent users in their system. And that kind of got me to start championing that idea a little bit on the human services side. And the wonderful staff went out and found some grants, and next thing you know, we're doing this engagement program. But it's just, it all ties together. The same people that are using our social services are using our public safety services, that are using our emergency medical services. And the more we start having to deal with those people in a much more holistic way and deal with the underlying issues, how much return on investment there is with that. And this partnership that goes back so far to where, Ruth Bascom appointed, Commissioner Farr to the commission in '95, and it was an ongoing thing then. It's just, one of the great ways of collaboration that we've done with government and pooling our resources and trying to deal with issues in the most practical way. And it's not just about the two cities either. This also funds Siuslaw Outreach Services in Florence and Cottage Grove Community Sharing in Cottage Grove, and has reaches all the way to Oak Ridge. The Human Services Commission does. So it's countywide, and it's great to have the partnership with the two large cities, but it really is a great partnership, and I'm glad we pulled it off the consent calendar, so give us a moment to talk about what a wonderful thing it is when we do collaborate with not only the governments, but also with the nonprofits that come to our meetings and the citizen members that attend our meetings. So it's really a great piece of our government here.
Thank you, Commissioner Bozovich. Commissioner Lycan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So Monday of last week, I participated in a conference call with the Deputy Director of the BLM. And you're probably wondering, what does Bureau of Land Management have to do with this conversation? I'm gonna get back to that, because while, yes, we were talking about forest management, yes, we were talking about the forest fires, but she went to a specific question, and it was very interesting coming from the Deputy Director of the BLM. She wanted to know, first of all, what's the median income of Lane County? What's the poverty rate of Lane County? And what's the percentage of those who are on SNAP in Lane County? And then can you give a comparison to where Lane County was in, say, 1970? And very interesting. So some numbers here. And I'm glad Commissioner Bozovich brought up Oak Ridge, because the numbers overall, today's buying power in Lane County is $10,000 a year less than would have been in 1970. If you index to inflation. Poverty rates in 1970 were only 7.9% households in Lane County. Today it's about 17% and over 20% for individuals. Those are in poverty. And the poverty rate in Oregon in 1970 was 11%. So Lane County was less than the state of Oregon. Now it's reverse. What's going on statewide. Oak Ridge, this is, and I'm glad Commissioner Bozovich brought this up. Oak Ridge, think about this for a moment. This is Oak Ridge today. 44.23% of the Oak Ridge population has an income less than or equal to 150% of the federal poverty line. 44%. Oak Ridge Elementary, 75% of the students are enrolled in the free and reduced lunch program. Even the Deputy Director of the BLM understands how important these issues are to our respective western counties that at one time, and I'm not suggesting that forest management will ever get to where it was back then, but losing that significant manufacturing that's happened here and has gone elsewhere to other places, whether it's out of country, out of state, losing some of that economic development opportunities that has happened here in Lane County in the past that we're still struggling to this day to recapture, has really played a significant effect on where we are today. And I come back to say to you, and Steve, we first met when I was in the budget committee in Springfield all those years ago, and but I really want to say thank you to your dedication in particular, because I think what has happened here is that you've been in a position to really provide a hand up. This isn't a hand out. This is a hand up to folks who really have had a struggling time. Maybe something happened with a good paying job, and they're literally just 3 months away. Some are just a month away. And so I just want to say thank you very much for the work that you've done, Steve, Karen, your entire staff here at Health and Human Services, and to Commissioner Farr and Commissioner Bozovich, thank you for your service on the committee. And of course, Pat's had a long time commitment to this for many, many years, and I really appreciate that. And but those statistics were interesting, but what was more interesting is that you would not expect them to be asked by the deputy director of the BLM. That's why I found that very, very profound. That's why I just brought this up, because it was very, very interesting to me. So thank you for your dedication over these years. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Commissioner Lycan. Commissioner Sorensen, then Commissioner Williams.
Thank you very much. Well, first of all, I wanted to thank you for the brochure that we got. I don't know if this has been distributed much to the public, but I highly recommend that people take a look at it. It's not the Human Services Commission just for Eugene and Springfield, but also for the surrounding county. And I feel like we don't talk enough about how to solve the problems of poverty. We haven't really used the word poverty much. I think it's great that our poverty and homelessness program does use the word poverty. There's just a lot of really poor people in Lane County, urban and rural. And it seems to me that when we tell people and when we have the statistics that back that tenfold return on investment for every dollar received, the Human Services strategically collaborative approach yields $10. That to me is a pretty powerful, return. And I think that we as government officials, whether it's Eugene or Springfield or Lane County, the participating local funders to HSC really ought to step up our game and put money into it. I know that Eugene and Springfield and to some extent Lane County, all local governments want to protect where their money is used and how they use it. But I think that the history of the Lane County Human Services Commission is a pretty positive one, where this money is used very efficiently. And that's not to say that the governments wouldn't use the money efficiently, but we already have a pretty good track record of using the money efficiently. And I'd like to see that we don't get into kind of a balkanization of the money, and that the county holds its money and Springfield holds its money and Eugene holds its money, and they don't really work together as funding this commission the way I think it should be. Lane County government, although we do staff this and we have to pay for the staffing and overseeing the employees that do a lot of the work, it's not really all our money that goes into it, because Eugene and Springfield contribute. I don't know what else we can do but go on the road and have a road show and go to the Springfield City Council, go to the Eugene City Council, and as we're doing here, pull something off the consent calendar so that we can talk about this in front of you guys and hopefully the public and other policymakers will pay attention. And just for my part, since I represent a district entirely in Eugene, I have gone to the Eugene Budget Committee to advocate for Eugene's contributions to the HSC, and if you guys could give us some kind of timeline of when Springfield and Eugene's Budget Committee next year will be doing this, I think it'd be well worth the energy just to let us know if we can go. If all of us can go, great. If all of us can go 10 times, even better. But, you know, if we have an opportunity, we can make the pitch that this is really vital, and that there's a great return on the investment. So I'll just point that out, that sometime in January or even December, they might come out with their calendar of their city budget process, and you know, I for one would be willing to give it a try again. And I think that Mr. Mokryski, who meets regularly with the city managers of Eugene and Springfield, that's another thing on your to-do list. Bring up the importance of working collaboratively, and not just working collaboratively, but putting money into this project. The number of people that are affected is really amazing. It's huge numbers of people. Something over a tenth of the county is touched by this program annually. 1 out of every 10 people in the whole county. So keep up your great work, and I'm glad that this was taken off the consent calendar.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Sorensen. And make note, Mr. Manella, Commissioner Sorensen suggested that we each go 10 times during the budget process. So, Commissioner Williams.
Thank you, Chair Farr. First of all, I'd like to say congratulations on an excellent administration of your duties and how you consistently provide great services to all the citizens of Lane County. I'd also like to thank Commissioner Bozovich for highlighting those issues and your effectiveness in South Lane County, Cottage Grove area. And I'd like to thank Commissioner Lyken for his information on East Lane County, specifically Oak Ridge, a particularly hard-hit area that I'm encouraged when I have my fellows also recognize the struggles that some of the deep rural areas of our county are experiencing. Those difficulties I would like to convey to those folks in those rural areas that we are working diligently to provide them the services that they need for better health, better living, and you folks do a marvelous job in your department, and I thank you very much for your service.
Thank you, Commissioner Williams. We're still a bit ahead of schedule, so I'm going to take 2 minutes and just say the words that I wanted to say. You know, this is the big story. I'm looking back to the back of the room where the Register Guard reporter is sitting. This is the big story of today, is the cooperation between the jurisdictions regarding human services. We're talking about it during this particular item that was pulled from the consent calendar, but in the next item, we're going to be talking more about cooperation between the jurisdictions regarding human services. It's huge how much we're able to do. And Mr. Manella, you mentioned that we help nonprofits leverage service to 58,000 Lane County residents. That's a understatement significantly, because if you look at some of the agencies that we do provide funding for and we do provide leverage toward, far more than 58,000. For instance, Food for Lane County, 1 out of every 3 kids in Lane County will eat out of a food box this year. You know, so the numbers are pretty amazing that we are able to, we're the glue that holds things together, the jurisdictional agreements that go beyond the city of Eugene and Springfield and Lane County, that go all the way to the very borders of the county. But I wanted to point out something significant about what Lane County Human Services Division has done and what we continue to do in human services. And I'll just give an example. Probably recognized by far one of the most effective nonprofits in the state of Oregon and across the nation is Food for Lane County. Food for Lane County is a household word. A lot of people know about Food for Lane County, but not a lot of people know how Food for Lane County began. So, Ms. Manella, how did Food for Lane County begin?
I I hired a consultant to form a new food bank in the county in 1984.
And the name of that consultant?
Caroline Frengel,
Caroline
who became
Frengel.
the first executive director of Food for Lane County.
So Food for Lane County was an offshoot of a brainchild of Steve Manella in our Human Services Division that mushroomed into Food for Lane County, which now distributes 8 million pounds of food annually. And so that's the type of work that we leverage here in Lane County throughout the entire county to serve people at the very basic level, kids who otherwise wouldn't eat. Because one night at about 2 a.m., Mr. Manella woke up and said, "Oh, we could do that." You know, that's the kind of thing that we're able to do with food, with our Human Services Division, and it's consolidating the multiple efforts of our nonprofits and other jurisdictions to make all of this happen. That's why I wanted to pull this off the consent calendar, because this is not little. This is huge. Ms. Gaffney.
Chair Farr, listening to the story about Food for Lane County made me want to underscore one piece that Steve kind of brushed over in the beginning, but I think also underscores the value of having the existing partnership. So we know that we have created an ongoing coalition of the cities and nonprofits in the county that's there when issues arrive. And I think another example would be the birth of our community health centers that really probably 12 years ago now, somewhere in that neighborhood, there had been huge need identified for healthcare in this community, and there wasn't a sponsor to be able to move that forward. And it was really through the organization of the Human Services Commission and Steve's hard work to get that initial grant and certification, where we now have 6 health centers in the community serving 30,000 people and meeting their needs. So it is important that we have those structures. It's also important that we have Steve, but it certainly is important too that we have an ongoing structure where those issues can go and incubate and become ongoing services in our community.
Absolutely, and it just is. It really is remarkable. And you know, you mentioned the health centers, and I said 2 o'clock was when Steve sat upright and thought, I can do that with food. With food. Well, what time of the morning was it that you sat upright on that one, Steve? So it really is remarkable. Once again, this is not little. This is huge. What we do in conjunction with other jurisdictions, with nonprofits, and significantly with private industry in Lane County. So thank you very much for interrupting your schedule and coming in for this particular item, but you get to stay for the next one. So we have before us currently order number 17082206 in the matter of accepting intergovernmental agreements from the cities of Eugene and Springfield for human services for fiscal year 2018 for the Department of Health and Human Services. Commissioner Bozovich.
So I'll move approval of the order.
Commissioner Bozovich moves approval of order 17082206.
Second.
Moved by Commissioner Bozovich, seconded by Commissioner Lycan. Discussion to the motion. I see none. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Passes unanimously. Thank you very much. And bravissimo. Next, then, we have, this is a report, not an order. This is a report. A work session will be hearing a report on options for establishment of a pilot program allowing camping in the urban transition zone within the urban growth boundary in the River Road, Santa Clara area. And same players today, Mr. Mokrahysky. We have today Ms. Gaffney and Mr. Manella.
I'm not going to steal any more thunder today. I've stolen all the thunder I can steal.
All right, thank you. And Chair Farr and Commissioners, as you noted, this is a report back item. Several months ago, there was a conversation at the board level around what might their opportunities be to look specifically at establishing a pilot program to allow camping within the urban growth boundary. And after discussion at a board meeting, staff were asked to analyze specifically what the opportunities might be in modeling something after the program that the City of Eugene has done for years now. So our purpose today is to bring back our analysis to date and then really to hear from you any particular feedback you have for us and direction for moving forward. Steve does have a recommendation in the packet, so he'll go through that his findings, and then share with you the recommendation and truly the opportunity opportunity today is to have the discussion amongst the board, and then if you'd like us to continue moving forward, then we can bring a more formal packet back to you at a later date. So I'm going to turn that over to Steve.
Commissioner Farr, Board, I'm feeling humbled by the conversation we just had. So I will tell you that, you know, the title for this agenda is a pilot program. What I will tell you is that the program which the City of Eugene established a number of years ago is, with St. Vincent de Paul, is a very effective way of managing homeless camping and encouraging private and public sector and businesses in the community to participate in helping those that need a place to stay. So what you have before you is a recommendation to look at establishing a intergovernmental agreement with the City of Eugene to piggyback on the successful St. Vincent de Paul car camping program. Program is very effective in that City of Eugene hires a nonprofit agency, St. Vincent de Paul, to carry out the program. They screen all the folks who come into the program, so there is a screen also around criminal records check for safety. Folks are then hosted by religious institutions, by private businesses, by private citizens. St. Vincent de Paul's staff help locate those opportunities. They also help people who are interested in participating in the program participate to their greatest ability. And so in analyzing this, really two major issues that we looked at. One was how do you go about doing this within the county legal structure? And Andy Clark, who's here, had helped the team analyze those options. The recommendation is to do this by ordinance the same way the City of Eugene has. Our conclusion was that we didn't need to take this through a land use process in order to make it happen. And then secondly, something that was pointed out in the analysis is the enforcement. Now, what I want to tell you is that St. Vincent de Paul will tell you that only about 1% of the folks that they host in this program end up having a dispute of some sort. First line of defense is St. Vincent de Paul comes out and mediates those disputes. Secondly, in the City of Eugene, they have both their parking service and EPD that participate if necessary. But I want to really say, and I think you heard from a speaker during public comment, this is just 1% of the case. In fact, what this does is really it helps organize and provide a sort of a structure to really govern this type of program so that community safety, community health, and the respect for the people who are in the program are maintained. So, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Manal. That was Ms. Grant who talked a little bit about how it's been reported that in the area surrounding rest stops and surrounding where camping is legally allowed, that crime and petty crime, graffiti, things like that, the incidences go down significantly. So thanks for the report on this, Mr. Manella, Ms. Gaffney. Discussion, we'll have a little bit of discussion surrounding it. I'd like to point out that the City of Eugene's ordinance was an offshoot of a committee that was formed. Once again, Ruth Bascom initially assigned the committee, and the committee was councillor Jim Torrey, and later Bobby Lee, and then Jim Torrey was elected mayor, so we continued that committee for quite some time. And we wrote an ordinance for the city of Eugene, which has been changed significantly as the years go along. The ordinance continues to change, continues to be dynamic in nature, to more address concerns that come up in neighborhoods perhaps, or concerns that come up in transportation or in public safety. So it's been a dynamic ordinance. It's not remained the same. And the numbers of incidences that go beyond St. Vincent de Paul's intervention are not even recognizable as a number. And I believe Keith Heath, I think, is the main administrator of the program for St. Vincent de Paul. And if you've ever spoken with Mr. Heath, it's hard to say no to him, A, and B, it's not because he has a physically imposing presence, which some might think he does, but that's not what happens. Is in his nature, he negotiates with people, he talks to people, and people understand why what they're doing is causing concern among the neighbors, or whatever it may be, concern among other campers. So we'll move forward with a little bit more discussion. The recommendation that we have today that we're going to be talking about is to proceed with the development of a pilot program, return within 30 days with a recommended ordinance and implementation plan that includes the feasibility of an intergovernmental agreement. So we'll, moving forward, Commissioner Bozevich.
Thank you, and I appreciate getting in the queue first, as this is going to impact an area that I represent pretty significantly, the Santa Clara area of Eugene, the independent state of Santa Clara, as it was stated earlier. And I have heard from some of the folks in Santa Clara, they're concerned about this. You know, there's the usual immediate reaction to anything that deals with the homeless population is we just don't want them here. And that's unfortunate, but that tends to be the knee-jerk reaction. What's unfortunate is they're already there. We have them camping in the drainage way that runs parallel to the Northwest Expressway up against the Santa Clara neighborhood. We have them camping along the river that runs on the other side. We have them, you know, all over the Santa Clara neighborhood right now in unregulated camping sites without sanitation and without any oversight or screening. And that's really not the best way to have a homeless population located in a predominantly residential area. I think this program might offer some opportunities to provide safe sites with screened campers and with the sanitation that's required by the program. But the thing I get the most questions about, and you have to appreciate this, is we have a highly strapped police division in our sheriff's department, you know, to where response times to rural incidences are measured in hours, not minutes. And so the question is how do we, you know, that 1% we do have to respond to if it's an actual public safety response, is that going to additionally create demand on the sheriff's department? And can you talk a little bit about where we might be able to go with the intergovernmental agreement, maybe to make sure that as we contract with the city and through them, St. Vincent de Paul, is that also going to include response from EPD, or is that going to be a response from LCSO? And are there other cases where EPD has taken over county responsibilities under an IGA?
Yeah, sure. Well, I'll take a shot at that. There are other examples where Lane County has agreements. I believe we have, and I'm looking for, well, Andy is here, and he potentially could speak to that. The 190 agreements that we have in the urban transition area with the city of Eugene. So there are some precedents for that, and one of the conversations that we're attempting to have with the city is the best way to pursue both the operation and coordination of this program, as well as the response to code enforcement complaints that may come in. The city already has a structure and agreements in place with the St. Vincent de Paul's for operations, and provides response to code enforcement complaints that come in. We have not done that historically, and this is new for us, so one of the things that we're looking at is engaging with the city and with another nonprofit organization to provide those services, since they already have that expertise. So I don't know, Andy, if you have any additional comments about the 190 agreements or other agreements that Lane County has with the city of Eugene in this type of case.
I don't have a lot of knowledge of other agreements we have with the city outside of the 190 agreements. I'm fairly sure we do. Chapter 190 allows intergovernmental agreements between governmental entities that essentially allow one to do for the other anything that the contracting party could do. So anything that the county is authorized to do, it can make an IGA with another government to take over that function, with some limitations, I think. The ones that you're aware of and that we the land use folk deal with a lot are the 190 agreements, where we have delegated to City of Eugene and the City of Springfield in certain cases the administration of land use functions in the urban growth boundary of those two cities. And that includes sort of an enforcement activity regarding land use complaints and enforcement actions. This plan proposal wouldn't implicate those agreements, because that is in the land use realm, and this is out of it. In fact, we wouldn't be able to engage in this sort of activity or the proposal here without the City of Eugene's agreement, because under the 190 agreements, we've delegated to them the obligation and responsibility and right to administer land use functions in the UGB. And so this is outside of that world. My guess is that the city has probably a mix in their enforcement activities between land use code enforcement that goes on in the city and in the UGB area. And probably there's some crossover with the folks who may do enforcement of their overnight camping or car camping activities. I'm not sure, but maybe St. Vincent's does that. But I guess I just want to caution not to try to blend those two things. We need to keep them separate, even if the same people are engaging in the same sort of activities in terms of enforcement of the Eugene Code, that it's not a land use thing. But yeah, we certainly have the authority to enter into an IGA with the city to do what they do under their overnight camping ordinance if we did this sort of proposal.
Chair Farr, I think I would just add very clearly, in our mind and understanding the conversation you had earlier, this would be separate from land use in the same way that City of Eugene adopted theirs via an ordinance outside of that process. So very much distinguished. And I'm trying to remember, I know there were some shops, I think, in the UGB that
well, actually, countywide, we have the Sheriff's Department has an IGA with the Eugene Police Department to run their secondhand store program, where there's a state law that requires secondhand sales to report some of those items to a database, and EPD actually runs that database and the enforcement of that reporting countywide. So they actually get out all across the county, because I ran into that when I got a call from a secondhand store up in the Junction City area, wondering why EPD was showing up and asking them questions and trying to get them to enroll in that program, and found out it was through that IGA. So there are examples where we actually have delegated some of our state statutory police powers through IGA and have EPD doing that. So I just kind of was hoping to kind of bring that sort of around, that there is precedent that not only in land use, but also even in the law enforcement arena, where we worked with the City of Eugene cooperatively to make sure those things happen. And you know, that's a really important aspect, I think, for a lot of the residents out there in Santa Clara that don't have the same public safety response and are concerned about, is this going to add to the public safety demand of the Sheriff's Department? And I think if we choose to move forward, I think it can be set up in a way where it does not, and we can make this, you know, not only the city have the contracts with St. Vincent to run the program, but also to carry out any response to those particular sites that are being run by St. Vincent. So I think that's one of the things I just wanted to bring forward, mostly because that was a question I was getting from constituents, was this going to place a burden on the Sheriff's Department? So I appreciate the discussion here.
Thank you, Commissioner Bozevich. We'll have more on that. Commissioner Lycan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And honestly, Commissioner Bozevich zeroed in on what I was going to ask. And so one of the things that I would ask is, to me, it's going to be critical because it says that Lane County would need to identify revenue to expand. I would like to see that. So when it comes back to the board, I'm hopeful that you have something there to, you have the revenue identified and to come back. I think what Commissioner Bozevich stated right here about LCSO, and they really don't have the revenue stream, the ability, the so on and so forth to really do the enforcement. So what kind of agreements are going to be put in place with the city of Eugene? And I think anytime, and the reason why I think it's going to be key, because if this is a pilot, and what if the next pilot is in Springfield? You now have something in place that you can say, here's the pilot. It's now in place. Here's the expectations to be coming from the city of Springfield in order for this to be successful, if they wish. I mean, that would be up to them. And right now, there hasn't been a real strong effort on the unincorporated areas that are linked to the city of Springfield as there is here. So that's going to be key, I think, for me personally, is to kind of see what, identify the revenue so we can have a look at that before we move forward on that. The concept is, I think the concept makes sense, and I'm glad that we're having this discussion. I was clearly a head nod to look at this as a pilot. Just because I'm a head nod to look at it as a pilot doesn't mean I'm a head nod to say, yes, I support this. So those are some of the key areas I think it'll be important as we move forward, because I think if we do this, we then have something in place that if another community says, hey, we would like, in our unincorporated area, how can Lane County work with this and this? And all of a sudden we say, hey, look what we have. We have a map, and we can then work with other communities to do the same thing. So those are my thoughts. But so far what I see, this is really good, and I want to say thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner Lycan. Further discussion? Commissioner Sorensen.
Thank you very much for the report and recommendation. I think we should move forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Then just a couple of things. Thanks for this good initial report. We've been looking at this for a long time, and once again, the city of Eugene runs a stellar program, one that's recognized nationally. In fact, when I was in Tucson not too long ago, as the headlines of the Tucson News the day after the Super Bowl, beat the Super Bowl out last February. So, what the city of Eugene is doing as far as taking care of innovative ways to help people move through homelessness into stable, steady housing situations. And this is one step in that direction. It's not an end. When we look at people camping in a church parking lot or camping in a business parking lot or on county property, that's not the end of their journey to stable residential living situation, but it's a step along the way. And as we make those steps smaller and smaller and smaller, they're easier to take, so that people who do not wish to lead a life of homelessness, and believe me, anybody who doubts that, there are a lot of people who are homeless who don't want to be homeless. They want to use their resources to get into stable living, to put their kids in stable living. This is a step along the way. And I'm looking at, right now I'm looking at an aerial of G Street in Springfield, the Baptist Church on G Street out by St. Vincent de Paul's facility out there, across the street from Two Rivers Dos Rios Elementary. There are 2 Conestogas in the church parking lot. I believe there may be 3 now, as a matter of fact, that are really very stable living environments for families. So it's, once again, it's a step to move people towards stable living. And Mr. Clark, thank you for providing your input. It's not easy sometimes making these decisions, and it's not easy researching, making certain that it's not going to have downstream implications that we do not foresee. And that's what we're looking at right now, is how did Eugene adapt their ordinance to what is actually a very well-working ordinance today. And I'm really excited, Mr. Mokrajewski, about the prospect, once again, of working with the City of Eugene in this pilot program to use their resources and our resources together to better the living situation for the people who live in Lane County. It really is exciting to me. Today's been a day where we herald the things that the jurisdictions are working together on. This is another area that down the road we can look back and say, look at what we did. Look at what we did to help people step out of homelessness. So this is huge. And so your recommendation to us is to proceed with the development of the pilot program by I'll use the includes the feasibility of an intergovernmental agreement and or agreement with a nonprofit organization. So put together, get some of the questions answered that we've raised today, and sometime in the next 30 days, we'll have an agenda item. Sometime perhaps toward the end of September, we'll come back with this and talk more about what does it look like? What does an intergovernmental agreement look like with the City of Eugene, and how can we move forward, and what is the timing? And significantly, Commissioner Lycan, the question that was raised in the Register Guard this morning in the news story, how do we pay for it? How do we pay for the initial investment, and how do we pay for the ongoing operation of the program? It's been suggested that we will save money ultimately by putting people in housing who otherwise are accessing emergency services, who otherwise are finding reasons to engage in criminal activity that simply involve trying to find a place to spend the night. And really, ultimately, potentially, the data is going to be hard to find, but eventually save money as far as taking care of I'll say problems that arise surrounding homelessness and individuals who are suffering or living in homelessness. Well, thank you for the discussion today. Any further discussion? Commissioner Bozievich.
Thank you. So I just want to put this a little bit in perspective. What's the total budget for the Human Services Division?
It's going to be close to $17 million with supplemental, yeah.
And what's the current cost of the program the City of Eugene runs for the entire city?
The cost of
the contract with St. Vincent de Paul?
$89,000.
Okay, a little bit of perspective there. We're talking about adding a piece of the UGB that's far smaller than the total size of the city. So we're not talking about $1 million program or millions of dollars of programs. We're talking about a tens of $1,000s program in an area where we're already spending $17 million. So, finding that funding, we'll identify it, yes, and we'll find out. And it could be, a new grant or something like that, new funds. It could be reallocating existing funds. But I do appreciate the discussion of identifying that funding in the future. But I just want to put how much that is prospectively, because this is a relatively cheap program to run. And it's a program that really, like I said, changes the illegal, unsanitary, unsafe camping to something that becomes more safe and sanitary for those people in this situation. And you talk about the 1% of the response, and most of those are resolved through mediation. Approximately 2% of the U.S. population is either in prison, jail, or on parole and probation. So you're talking about this identified population in this camping program actually having a much lower incidence, and not necessarily criminal incidents, than the entire U.S. population. So, when you talk about relative safety of these camping sites, that kind of makes me feel pretty good that only 1% are dealing with issues. And of those, a lot of those are just resolved through mediation and not really rise to the criminal level. So I appreciate the information. And I think I agree with Commissioner Sorensen. We should move forward with continuing to develop this and talking with the city on the IGAs.
And a part of the presentation within 30 days will be how do we respond to people who do have significant questions that they feel are legitimate questions, and they are legitimate questions. How do we answer them? How do we find the words to answer them? And one of them regarding the expense of the program, some small fraction of $89,000 would seem to be the amount of money that we're looking at. We'll see. Thank you very much for the presentation today. Looking forward to hearing more on this. And thank you, Ms. Mulholland and Ms. Grant, for being a part of the discussion. Thank you for staying for this this agenda item.
Thank you.
Then this basically concludes this morning business, other than announcements. Excuse me. Let's see. County Administration.
Okay, I will invite Ms. Gaffney back. I told her she didn't have to stay, and now I'm telling her she does need to stay. I know this is a bit anticlimactic because you heard Karen speak at a earlier board meeting in August, and then she's presented here today. But as I've done, and you all know Karen, but as I've done with all the other directors, as we've made significant new hires, I wanted to just take an opportunity here in a public forum to share with the board, as we have via other communications previously, a little bit about the process that we went through for the selection of a new Health and Human Service director. Of course, you all know that Alicia Hayes retired after 31 years with Lane County, and we celebrated her great tenure and legacy to Lane County. And over the last several months, we've been going through a significant national recruitment process, very competitive process, and I've shared with others this is among the most thorough and competitive processes that I've participated in the last 20 years. We had, I think, 138 applicants were screened in our efforts to identify the next Health and Human Service director. We had 6 finalists. Commissioners were all invited to participate in a meet and greet, and we had a speed dating lunch and 2 different panels and phone interviews, and really some outstanding finalists participated there with really extensive experience in various areas of Health and Human Services. Folks from around the Pacific Northwest with experience on the East Coast, experience at the state level here in Oregon, and at the end of the day, a really clear choice I felt was in front of us to select Karen Gaffney as the next Director of Health and Human Services. And so I just wanted to, announce that and share publicly a few things. Of course, you all know that Karen has been the Assistant Director of Lane County's Health and Human Services Department for 17 years. She serves on the Trillium Community Health Plan Board of Directors, the Lane County Early Learning Alliance, the state-supported Supportive Housing Work Group, the Community Health Partnership, Public Safety Coordinating Council, and previously served as the co-chair of the State Medical Advisory Committee. She's a double duck, a bachelor's degree, Bachelor of Science in Journalism, and a master's degree in Public Administration from the University of Oregon. I've also shared that she's demonstrated a unique ability to build strong teams, strategically plan for the future, and to get things done. So I'm really excited to have Karen on the team now. July 29th, I think, was your first. Week 4, yeah. And I shared with Karen yesterday that I was in a meeting last week with a number of community leaders about the U of O night campus. Chris Edwards was presenting to the Eugene City Manager and myself, and Traveling County, a U of O Board of Trustee, former Mayor Jim Torrey was in that group, the Eugene Chamber of Commerce, Springfield representatives as well. And everyone was going around the table and introducing themselves, and it got to former Mayor Jim Torrey, and he started to talk about Lane County and how impressed he is with the great work that Lane County and the Board of Commissioners is doing. And he looked at me and he said, and your hire of Karen Gaffney as the new Director of Health and Human Services was a brilliant move. So of course I agree with that assessment, but I thought what a wonderful tribute to Karen and the great work that she has done previously. And we're just really excited to work with you in this new leadership role. So I wanted to take that opportunity to introduce you.
Well, thank you. And I've said to a number of people the last few weeks, it's an odd thing to be the brand new director and also the girl who's worked here for 27 years. So both of those things are true. And for me, that's an exciting part of embarking in this new role, is that I get to bring with me everything I know about our organization. I so appreciate the story about Jim Torrey. It speaks to me of those roots that I have in this community. community. And so being able to switch into the director role, I think, provides the department an opportunity to really benefit from what I've learned over the years and those connections I've made. And I think this is such an exciting time to be at Health and Human Services. In your board discussion, you talked about what we bring to this work in leveraging the Public Safety Coordinating Council and the Poverty and Homelessness Board. I think about my work at Trillium, that in this particular position, we're able to tap into all those different systems and figure out how to array those pieces differently so that our impact in the community is bigger and deeper and better. So I'm thrilled to be in this position and really appreciate the relationships that we've built over the years too. So thank you for that surprise this morning.
We're surprising all people all over today.
Yes, you are.
27 years.
Yes.
I think about my life 27 years ago. 27 years ago this week, Debbie and I were celebrating our 15th wedding anniversary.
Yes.
Thank you, Karen.
I'm hoping perhaps I'll have 42 years here at the county.
Bravo. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And it's really an exciting time, I think, for Lane County in terms of our leadership of the departments. We've got a great team in place, and it's been fun to be able to bring people from outside the organization, people like Greg Rickoff and Tim Elsey, who've come from outside of the organization and have brought a really great perspective in their leadership approach and style. And then to have people from within the organization like Mike Finch and Karen Gaffney, who have wonderful experience and tenure and historical knowledge and great leadership skills. And so that balance on our leadership team is really outstanding when you look at our elected department heads with Sheriff Trapp and DA Perlow and Mike Coles. It's just a really well-rounded group of folks. So, and as Marcia Edwards, our HR director, completes her service, she is retired and is helping us in the transition here. As we recruit for a new HR director, we'll go out and do that process and really round out our leadership team. So thank you for the opportunity to make some comments about Karen. Just a couple other quick things I wanted to share with the board. Hopefully you've received copies of this. This is our new, we've been working on this and noodling ideas around a simple threefold document that you all and others can share with members of the public that sort of simply talks about our budget, the local resources and that we collect and how we spend that money and where our priorities are and our strategic plan and those kind of things. So we've shared these with commissioners. We will do this each year after the board adopts the budget. And I welcome your feedback on this, our budget in brief document. We've got the nice little dollar here that breaks out the amount of property taxes paid for by Lane County residents, how much goes to Lane County, how much goes to cities and school districts and other entities, and how those resources are distributed, where our priorities are, the services we provide, and some recent successes and challenges that we face. So I encourage you to share this with your constituents and stakeholders in the community and provide any feedback that you receive on how we can improve communicating that information with the public. And finally, Mr. Chair, just to comment on the one of the public comments this morning regarding the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission and the Jordan Cove project that we received. I've shared this with Mr. Kyler, and he's looking into we do have a copy of the letter from the president, the AOC president, and so we're looking into that, and we'll coordinate understanding what that was all about and any potential response that may need to come from the board in the future. So just wanted to let you know that we're following up on that inquiry. I have one other item that I'd like to bring up under agenda team requests, if that's okay, but that's all I have for announcements.
And Ms. Mokarasi, I see Dan Hurley is with us today. Hi, Dan. Anything on the agenda for you today? Oh, good. Okay. Well, thank you for being patient, because that's not going to happen until 3 o'clock. No. Just kidding. Well, thank you, Ms. Mokarasi. We'll take a step back and any county council announcements. I see county council not present unless they've forwarded anything to you. I believe that would be none. Then we'll move along to item 11, which is commissioner business. Any announcements from commissioners? we're announcement-less this morning. So moving right along to agenda team requests and work session requests. Commissioner Bozevich.
Thank you. So agenda team has had an item sitting on our to-do list, which was to have adopt a board meeting decorum or set of rules, and we've discussed that before, and I think there's been some staff work on all that, but we kind of got to a point where we need the board's input, whether we have a work session of the entire board first on those rules to give input before it goes to policy and procedures, or whether we should send it to policies and procedures first, where it'll be worked on by 2 commissioners to come back to the full board. And it was just kind of a process check. So I'm opening up that to the rest of the board as to where you'd like to see that fit in the process, because we should really move on with that. It's something we started last December, and we keep pushing it off because of crowded agendas. But
we have a policy and procedure meeting scheduled for September 8th, Commissioner Lycan. So the option that we have is to have a general board discussion as early as August 29th. So it could be added to the agenda for the afternoon of the 29th, 1 week from today. So your thoughts on that? Commissioner Sorensen.
What is being proposed?
Just that we generally look at the, I'll step back. We've had a couple of meetings where we've been breaking new ground and encountered situations that were out of the ordinary. So more or less just the procedure for the chair and the entire board. How do we use protocol to get through our meetings, and what is the protocol during the meetings, and at what point, it might be as simple as at what point do we recess in the middle of a disturbance, for instance. So just a general discussion on how do we handle board meetings. Something that we've not had as a board, and I don't know, Commissioner Sorensen, you have a great deal more history than I have with the board. I don't know if that's ever been generally discussed.
Well, I think it's a good idea to have the discussion, first of all. Secondly, and this is more for Commissioner Williams' benefit, but we have had some pretty awkward situations. I guess the meeting up in Oak Ridge was the most recent one that I can remember, where we had a disturbance in the meeting. I think it was handled okay at the time, but still, it'd be nice to have a little better idea of what to do under these things. And so I would agree that we should discuss it. And, just the reality is that public meetings aren't always as calm as this one is proceeding today. There's some people with some really strong opinions. Sometimes it even gets to the point of violence. And I think it's always good to review the policies. If there's something specific, like, I think years ago we changed the rule to say that we could call on the sheriff during board meetings, and we've done that. We've had, in fact, out in Veneta, when we had the big meeting out there over the proposed tax, we had the sheriff there, because there was concern about people disrupting the meeting or threatening the commissioners, things like that. So I think it's good to review it so that we're all up to speed on what our policies are.
Excellent. And we have an option of adding it as a 1:30 p.m. item on the agenda for August 29th, And I believe the staff has a framework for discussion prepared that we wouldn't have to go into it blind. There'd be a framework for discussion regarding what we would send forward at that point to the Policy and Procedure Committee, which would then forward a recommendation back to the board as to how to move forward. Any further discussion?
So we have a draft, and so that is the question: is do you want to have a work session at the board first, or do you want to send it to policies and procedures? And
maybe you could send us the draft, then we could look at it.
Then we have
to
be careful about open meetings and those issues.
But I mean, if the staff has a draft, we can certainly look at it, but I agree we shouldn't be discussing it on email.
We could look at that and then discuss it as a part of the regular meeting next Tuesday.
Okay.
Is that,
That is part of the agenda package.
which would mean, as of right now, next Tuesday's agenda concludes prior to the lunch break. This would just add a single item after the lunch break, maybe a 45-minute item, maybe a 60-minute item after the lunch break.
And then you can always refer it back to policies and procedures if you feel like it needs more work. I know we're not expecting that you would approve it next at a work session.
Okay. Then could you forward that information to Ms. Jones to add that to next?
No, I feel like she already knows.
I've got a hunch that Ms. Jones is
She's
looking and
been
listening.
texting me.
So, excellent. Oh, yeah. So thank you. Then any further agenda team requests, Mr. Mokrycki?
I had one, Mr. Chair, we had an outstanding item on the assignments list. Commissioner Stewart had requested, it's an open assignment, he had requested regarding tiny houses. It was suggested that, and we've had some discussion about his interest, I think, was looking at how could we look at our policies and portfolio of investments to see if we could support use of tiny houses as it relates to addressing the need for affordable housing in the community. And our thinking is that given everything happening around poverty and homelessness, the discussion you just had about overnight camping in the UGB, the previous discussion about supportive housing, that it may make sense to move that discussion about tiny houses into our strategic plan effort as we move forward and we sort of think about the portfolio of poverty and homelessness work. Where does that fit in there? So as you know, we're going to be spending some time over the next few months working on updating our strategic plan. So if it's okay, and we're just looking for head nods here to move that assignment into the strategic planning realm when we have that discussion.
Excellent. So head nods on that, then let's go on that.
And Mr. Chair, I have one other item, unless other commissioners have other.
I see nothing.
And one other thing that I probably should have brought up under assignments, but I'll bring up here. When the board approved the deal points for the courthouse, City Hall land exchange proposal between the City of Eugene and Lane County, one of those requirements that you placed on us was for the administrator to report back when we were preparing to sign the final agreement. We are nearing that point, and I just wanted to share with the board. So I've targeted this Friday, August 25th. The board gave us until the end of September. We really have said, the key thing, we don't need to take that time if we can get everything wrapped up. We think we're very close. We are trying to move aggressively forward so that we can get this onto Judge Barron's docket because he is retired and has a limited number of cases that he can take each year. Since he has previously seen this case, we really would like to have that continuity and consistency with the same judge. And so we're wrapping up some final pieces of that purchase and sale agreement and then all the corresponding documents that will go along with that for the city manager and I to sign. My hope is that we can finalize it by this Friday. That's our goal. Everything that I have reviewed to date is consistent with the deal points that the board adopted when you adopted those deal points back in mid-July.
It was, yeah.
I think it was early to mid-July, right after the 4th of July timeframe. So I just wanted to share that with you. I will come back and let you know after it is signed and verify that everything was consistent with the deal points, but that was one of the things that we said we'd do is update you on that. We have some final items that we're seeking for a response back from the City of Eugene, so waiting on that to get back, and again, hoping that by the end of this week we'll have that all wrapped up. Just wanted to
Thank you, Mr. Mokrycki. Then to the board, we have one item on the agenda this afternoon. The agenda looks like we have 4 items, but it's actually only one item. So we have an option of those 4 items this afternoon. That's about a 45-minute agenda approximately. Now, which brings up an executive session. We have 3 items on our executive session, probably a total of a little over an hour of executive session. One of the items on the executive session is a relatively short item, and it's to conduct deliberations with persons designated by the governing body to negotiate real property transactions. I believe that is what Mr. Hurley is here for. So with the board's indulgence, I will read us into executive session. We can cover a short portion of the executive session prior to the lunch break, and then continue with the balance of the executive session after lunch break, if that, I see no objections to that. This item should be relatively short, and I will read us into executive session. After the gavel, the sound of the gavel will be going into executive session. We will return to Harris Hall at 1:30 to return to regular session for our regular afternoon agenda prior to going back into executive session after that. So the Board of County Commissioners will meet in executive session to conduct deliberations with persons designated by the governing body to negotiate real property transactions and to consult with counsel concerning the legal rights and duties of a public body with regard to current litigation or litigation likely to be filed. This executive session is held pursuant to ORS 192.6602E and H, which allows the board to meet in executive session for the purposes listed above. Representatives of the news media and designated staff shall be allowed to attend the executive session. All other members of the audience are asked to leave the room. Representatives of the news media are specifically directed not to report on any of the deliberations during the executive session, except to state the general subject of the session as previously announced. No decision may be made in executive session. We reserve the right to come back out into public session should the need arise. Executive session will be held in the BCC conference room.